cool things. I'll get into that in a second. And then what I'm planning to do is, going through this talk and then leaving the rest of the time for any Q&A that you guys might have. So just, once it goes through the presentation, feel free to ask questions. Let's begin. All right, so a little information about me. I want to try to get this thing at the bottom to go away, but I guess it's okay. Okay, there you go. Cool. So that's me. There's my website and everything. So I'm a composer and sound designer for games. I also am a professor at Bloomfield College, where I teach audio for visual media. So just basically how to create audio for games, movies, animation, all that good stuff. So here's a couple of things I worked on. Last year I worked on Doomwheel. It's a really cool mobile game of the Warhammer IP, so that was really cool. Worked on a couple VR things, the Oceans VR that you can see there. I did some music and sound design for Pixel Prison Blues, which is this huge 30-player game, which is pretty cool. They had that installed, I think, in a couple malls, and I think in Buffalo Wild Wings they had an installation of that, so that was really awesome. A couple other things there. I'm working on an unannounced AAA title, which I cannot say what it is, but I can say that I'm working on something really, really cool. So that's me. All right. So yeah. So this is what we're going to learn today. I want to help all of you learn how to, or when to conceptualize the sound for your game. Teach all of you how to find the right composer and sound designer. We're going to talk about communication. We're going to talk about how to give good feedback. We're going to talk about just the information you need to relay to your sound designers so they can do their job well. We're going to talk a little bit about contracts. Not so much money and budget since you're all college students, but I do want to kind of shine a little light on contracts and why they're important. And I think it might be fun to just very, very surface, just delve into interactive audio. So I think that could be fun for all of us to learn about. So it's a little bit of what we're going into today. And then, like I said, at the very end, we'll be doing some Q&A. So the reason why I'm giving this presentation today is because, hope you all saw that animation. Yes, so audio is very, very important to your game's experience. Should probably go back on, yes. Audio can make or break the game. You can have your game, but if the audio is not good, the whole experience kind of suffers. So I'm here today to talk about the importance of audio, and again, how to make the audio in your games better. So, all right. Anyway. Let's talk about when to conceptualize your audio. Yes, so I believe that audio should be conceptualized around the same time as your art and just, your game mechanics, anything else that you're trying to figure out for your game, because audio and art actually goes hand in hand to help tell the story of the game. Even if your game doesn't have, a very complicated story, that's okay. The audio and the art still work together, so they should be conceptualized at the same time. So, as you're figuring out your game's mechanics, you're figuring out, where your game is set and everything, you should be thinking about perhaps, what sort of music that you need. And, as you're designing, maybe enemies or just other aspects of your game's world, think about what sound effects those things would make. And you can create a sound effect asset list as you're doing that. If you end up bringing in an audio person at the last second when you have everything else done, you have a game completely done, but you just don't have sound effects, it really doesn't allow the audio designer to have much time to delve into the game's world. And, if you're having to do a rush job, it could result in just audio that's not as good as it could be. So, again, you might be working on a game, you might think, oh, I have no idea what the audio sounds like. I've talked to many game designers, and they'll know everything about what their art's supposed to look like and the game mechanics, and I ask them, oh, what kind of music do you want? And they just look at me and they're just like, I have no idea, I really don't know. But it is something you can think about early. As soon as you're, designing the game, you could be thinking about what kind of audio that you need, whether it's music or sound effects. So, a couple things you can ask yourself in order to help conceptualize your audio. A lot of this goes more so for music, but there are, there are aspects of sound design in here as well, sound effects. You can ask yourself, where does your game take place? Does it take place maybe, is it in space? Is it in the Wild West? Like, where does your game take place? And then, that kind of lends itself, that'll kind of help you think about, okay, what kind of music do I need? Ask yourself who your characters are, what genre of game is it? Is it a puzzle game, swords and sorcery, first person shooter, whatever it may be. Ask yourself, is it a long experience game, such as an RPG, or maybe a short experience game, such as an arcade game? Think about what objects are making sounds in the game's world. Think about when each song would happen in the game. Is it a level? Is it a cutscene? Is it main menu music? So anyway, all of this helps you really just narrow down what you need in terms of audio. So I mentioned, where does your game take place? If it takes place in space, you might be looking for maybe more electronic style music. If it takes place, like I said, in the Wild West, you might be looking for like Ennio Morricone, just the good, the bad, the ugly type of music like that. If it takes place, in medieval times, you might be looking for more orchestral music. So the setting can lend itself very well to helping you kind of narrow down a musical genre. But then, you can think about who your characters are too. I love the example of, perhaps you have this swords and sorcery type game, but if your main character is something like Jack Black, just a Jack Black knockoff or something, you might want to consider more rock and roll. So, asking yourself where does the game take place and who the characters are really can help you start designing audio that, fits really well into your game's world. Genres, another indication of what music is appropriate for the game. Short experience versus a long experience game. Basically, asking this question will help you decide how much music you need. If you have a kind of more arcade-style short experience game, you might not need as many musical tracks. You might need only one or two kind of backing tracks, but a lot more sound effects. Whereas if you have a longer RPG game, you might need a lot more music. So asking yourself how long your game takes to play, or if it's a kind of like jump in, jump out game, or is it kind of a much longer experience, will help you understand how much more music you need. What is making a sound? So again, think about, maybe creatures in the environment, weapon sounds, or, power-ups, whatever it may be. Think about everything in your game that makes a sound, because a lot of things are going to be making sounds. Write that all down and create some sort of acid list based off of that. Thinking about if a track has to loop versus not loop. Most of the time in games, tracks should loop, so that's very important. The only time a track really wouldn't loop is maybe if you have a credits roll or a cutscene, but most of the time tracks are going to loop. Through asking yourself all of this, and through also asking yourself too, like, how many levels are in my game, how many different screens need music, you can start figuring out a rough number of tracks that you'll need. And likewise, if you start asking yourself, okay, how many enemies do I have in my game? How many power-ups do I have? How many different environmental sounds, could be put in here? That'll start helping you figure out a rough number of sound effects you'll need. So, again, just thinking about all of this will help you go from I have no idea what I need, or I have no idea what kind of audio I want, to having a much stronger idea of what you need for your game. So this is definitely very, very important to think about. Obviously, I know games change in scope, as you develop them. That happens. Sometimes they grow in scope, or sometimes they shrink in scope, and that's fine. That is to be expected. That maybe some features that you might have planned for audio for might not make it into the final game, and or you might add a feature, and that's okay. But at least go into your game with some sort of idea at that point in time of what you'll need for your audio. And we kind of talked about all this, but the slides just kind of like goes over what I talked about just before. So I talked about listing all the objects in the game to make a sound effect, how many game levels or scenarios you have, how long is each level. So understanding how long one of your levels is will help you determine how long your musical loops need to be. So if it takes a player maybe a minute and a half to play through a level, you might only need a 30-second loop or a 45-second loop. Whereas if it takes a player maybe 10 minutes to play for a level, I'd say consider something a little bit longer, like 2 minutes, 30 seconds for your loops. Another thing I didn't mention yet, but is also important, is voiceover. Do you need voiceover? Perhaps, is there spoken dialogue in your game? Do enemies or other NPCs kind of have little exclamations that they make. Maybe like, there's animal sounds in your games that need to be voiced over. So voiceover is also part of, assessing your audio needs too. So definitely take that into consideration. This one might be a little bit hard to see. It's just kind of a silly picture I threw in there. Is just talking about, musical genres in games. Sometimes I just want to kind of like talk about, how to help you figure out like what musical genre might fit your game. And I give the example before of, a Jack Black type character in a Swords and Sorcery world. But, as I said before, just think about like the setting, the characters, and the genre of the game. Another thing that might help you out too for figuring out musical genre for the game is think about the music that you might listen to that inspires you to, make your game. Does anyone here, do you guys listen to music when you're developing your games? Anyone?
A couple hands up.
Sometimes? Yeah, so, if you're listening to music and it's inspiring your game in some way, you can go back to that music and perhaps you'll find a musical genre, like just, if you listen to a lot of rock music that's inspiring your game, chances are that maybe rock music might be a good fit for your game. So, something to think about as well. So, I love this one.
I actually just quoted that the other day, so...
It's great, it's great. So, when you do end up talking to an audio designer, which we'll get a little bit more into later in the presentation, it's just important to understand that, you don't have to be a musical expert to think about what you want for your game. You are hiring a musical expert, at the end of the day to work on your audio, but you don't need to be a musical expert. You just need to think about, what kind of emotions are you trying to convey with your game. You can, again, like I mentioned, you could, if there's certain music that inspires your game, you could show musical examples of such. But yeah, you don't need to, you don't need to have a music degree. You don't need to really understand music to understand what fits in your game. But if you just ask yourself, again, what is the setting of the game? What are the characters? What kind of genre of music or what kind of genre of game do I have? It'll help you start narrowing it down to, a genre of music that would fit. So I don't know if you guys have any examples of games that you're working on. Maybe we could do a little exercise. You could talk about like what games you're working on. I can try to help you find a fitting genre of music. It's something I like to do with some people I give the talks to.
So we have a game where basically it's a VR experience and you're a package handler. Boxes come flying at you. You gotta put them on the right conveyor belt. Otherwise, you're docked pay and you might be fired. It's like a warehouse kind of environment.
Oh, nice. Yeah. So setting I think would be really good for this one. So it's set in a warehouse. What kind of music would you hear, like, at your 9 to 5 if you're working at, like, at a warehouse?
Depression.
Maybe just something kind of, like, inoffensive, unassuming,
elevator music, just like...
Elevator, yeah, like, Muzak might be really good, just kind of, like, very, very vanilla, very unassuming, very inoffensive. Maybe, like, somewhat upbeat, just to kind of get your mind off of the I guess the boredom that the job would actually set in you. That might be kind of like that. Something kind of I don't know, cute and inoffensive, I think. Elevator music, whoever said that, really good. What else? That actually sounds like a really cool game, by the way. I love this kind of like...
Yeah, it's actually a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm working on a game where basically you are a UFO and you're like going around the city, and you're basically trying to find your lost friend, and you have to dodge lights so that the people on the ground don't see you. I'm not really sure. Like, I feel like it would probably be like, music-wise, I'm honestly not really sure like what kind of tracks. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I thought about just using like the ET soundtrack, but like.
Well, remember I suggested like maybe synthwave or something like
Like synthwave is in like the the Stranger Themes, the Stranger Things theme.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say since it's like a self-paced.
Have you ever seen the X-Files?
The X-Files. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just thought of the theme and watching the gameplay. Yeah.
That could
Yeah,
be, that
I
could
think
be
with like aliens, we always have like an association of that sort of like minimalist, like kind of kind of like odd sounding scales. I think like the augmented scale would be really good for that. Kind of just like the theremin might be a good instrument too. I think someone said synthwave. I think that would be pretty cool too. But like maybe like kind of go for like a minimal instrumentation. Theremin, just kind of not a major or minor scale, but just something for lack of a better term, alien sounding. You can use like a whole tone scale, like which would it's just like it's kind of like a scale, but it's like some of the intervals are a little messed up. If you have more of a musical background, I can kind of go a little bit more into it, but I just think something is kind of like off-putting and a little spooky, so the theremin covers that really well. But yeah, the concept of the game though sounds kind of cheap though too. You're just sort of looking for your friends, so maybe the theremin can be accompanied by something breezy sounding or fun sounding, like acoustic guitar or ukulele. That might be interesting. But yeah.
Alex,
Anyone else?
Yeah.
I've got one
Oh, yeah.
this.
So I'm working on a RPG. Essentially,
Mhm.
like in terms of like the art style, it's like pixel art in the overworld, but then the battles have like full character illustrations. And so what I
Okay.
plan for it is like not exactly chiptunes, but like kind of more techno music for the overworld meant to match the pixel art. And
Okay.
I haven't really decided on anything for the battles.
Cool. Well, I think what is the setting of the game? Like, where does it take place? Is it
Modern? It's like something like Earthbound, where modern
Okay.
town.
I think that if it would be interesting to kind of musically join the two scenarios, even though you have something that's kind of like pixelated overworlds, but then something a little more detailed in the battles. But I think just to have some kind of something kind of joining the two styles, so musically would be really important. So if you're going to kind of go with like a techno sort of feel in the overworld, I think keeping that feeling in the battles while maybe just amping up, the tempo, the instrumentation, and more drums, maybe throw some guitars in there or something, to kind of show the franticness of a battle would be really important. So you probably want to keep those two scenarios, even though they look different, you want some kind of cohesion between them. So I think music notes can help you out with that.
Yeah, sounds cool. Alright.
Cool.
Well,
Is that everyone, or if anyone's got another one, or we can move
yeah.
on?
Alex had one more question.
I've tried to get into like digital audio workstations, and I've had trouble because like I tried LMMS and it was really complex, and there's like I don't know, I just couldn't get into it. I don't know. You have any recommendations?
There's a slide later where she goes.
Oh, there's a
into
slide later.
actual, yeah.
Yeah, there was Q&A later, but yeah,
I thought we were like
probably-
almost done here.
No,
Okay.
yeah. This was just
Oh, no.
for like comparing it to games. So she
Oh,
can-
there's
she'll
there's one
probably
more
answer that question
specification.
Okay.
But I can definitely answer that question for you. Let's go into a little more detail at the Q&A section. But it just are you using Windows or Mac?
I use Windows.
Reaper. I mean, even if you're using Mac, Reaper is super cheap for. I think it's free if I'm not mistaken for a student license. If not, it's like $50. It's super
Reaper?
cheap and it's easy to use. And it works for PC and Mac, and it's really, really good. And it's used a lot by game audio professionals. And again, at the price point, the entry point, I think again it's free for students, or at least free for you to try. It's totally worth it. So I would say Reaper. But we can go into more details about that later, about like DAWs and whatnot too.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. All right. So this is just a just kind of slide here, just again about just music in general, about music, like whether it should loop or be a non-looping track. Just again, kind of just supplementing what I said before about trying to assess if your music should loop or not. And most of the time, it would be. Basically, the time that your player is going to be in a certain area of your game or a certain level, and you don't know how long that could be. It could be, a minute, it could be 10 minutes, it could be whatever you want your music to loop. But if it's something that's a finite amount of time, such as a cutscene or maybe like an on-rails segment, then the music doesn't have to loop. So there's that. All right. So we talked mostly about music, and I'm going to talk about sound effects too. Just kind of going on a little bit more beyond the point of thinking about every object in your game's world that makes a sound. There's other things you can think about too. We don't think often about ambiences. Say if you're playing Dark Souls and you hear the kind of ambience of the dungeon or the world that you're in. That's just kind of like background wash of sounds. Ambiences are really cool too, and another thing that's cool about ambience is that they can often take the place of music, depending on the game. If your game is kind of like more darker in nature, I'd say ambiences would be the way to go. You can use ambience just in lieu of music, and it really just helps help create the game's environments. Or rather, even if you do have music going on in the background, having some kind of ambience will really help convince the player that they are where they are. So say, you have a level that takes place in a forest, you might want to create an ambience with winds rustling through the trees, birds chirping, maybe some water sources such as a river. Stuff like that would really help convince the player, even just beyond the artwork, that they are really in a forest. So ambiences are really important too. UI sound effects, often very much overlooked. I'll get asset lists sometimes from developers, and they'll beautifully include everything except for the UI, but every game has UI in it, so you're going to need, your basic, confirm sounds, cancel sounds, select this sound, stuff like that. You're going to need UI sounds, and, they can be even more complicated depending on the genre of the game. You might have a sound for equipping objects. You might have a sound for picking up treasure. You might have a sound for dropping something. You might have a sound for buying something from a shop or selling something back to a shop. So UI is very, very important. My last point here is think about moments where an audio cue can speak volumes. So I have the picture here from Legend of Zelda. So I'll ask everyone, what happens when you solve a puzzle in the Legend of Zelda series? Nobody?
We all every single person did the sound.
It was great.
Yeah, I can hear it.
A little too far away.
Yeah.
There we go. Beautiful. Yep. So when you solve a puzzle in Legend of Zelda, you achieve something. The game will play an audio cue for you, and it's that little jingle there that what are you saying? Beautifully saying for me. So yeah, that indicates to the player that they did something correctly. So, you want to think about where audio cues can really tell the player that they did something correctly. It makes so much more sense to do that rather than the game to say hey, you did a good job, all right, great. Instead, the game rewards the player by playing that little jingle. And it just, it's this response in the player. It makes them feel really good for solving the puzzles, that they get to hear that. So, that is really, really cool. So you can think about where audio cues can help, tell the player that they've done something correct, that they haven't done something right, that, they're on the right track. Maybe, if there's an exploration section to your game, you can maybe use subtle audio chimes to tell the player that they're going in the right direction. Or rather not play those things when the player is not going in the right direction. Another example that I really like a lot about audio cues that really speak volumes is in the Ace Attorney series. So when you're in the courtroom and you present the correct evidence, the music actually cuts out. And that indicates to the player that you have presented the correct audience. That also creates a very dramatic moment in the game. You have this music going, you're trying to think about what evidence to present, and when the music cuts out, you're correct, and it's just a very big moment, because all of a sudden you're not hearing anything, and it really just kind of augments the fact that you got this right evidence, and you're about to bust the guy on the stand. So it's a really cool moment. I really like it. So You can think about audio cues such as Legend of Zelda playing that chime, or even sometimes cutting out audio to create a more dramatic moment, such as what Ace Attorney does. Alright, so anyway, that's part 1. Part 2 is very about how to find the right audio designer for your projects. So, you show this picture of Zoidberg here. Need a sound person? Why not Zoidberg? Alright, so how do you find the right audio person? It's very important that you listen to their portfolios. So, say you're making a game and you're on the search for an audio designer, listen to their portfolios, whether it's music, sound effects, or both. And you just want to kind of assess that if they can convincingly create music in the genre that you are looking for. So we talked in part 1 about how to assess what genre of music is appropriate for your game. Now in part 2, you want to be able to assess if an audio designer can create that music convincingly. Talk to your audio designer about your game. You want to make sure that they're interested in working on it. It's much easier to work with an audio designer who is genuinely interested in your project rather than one who just doesn't seem to care. So that's very important. And it's important too to work with somebody that you like and want to work with. Don't work with like that person you can't stand. Like, why would you do that? And then other than that, think about what is important to you in an audio designer and a contractor. Location, everyone's going to be at your school. So, do you want maybe somebody who's at your school, or would you don't mind if it's somebody from outside of your school? I want to make sure that they're a cool person. You want to make sure that, is it important that they're organized and on time? Whatever is important to you is what you have to look for in a contractor. So, pretty easy. I'm not sure if at your school, maybe I'll go back a little bit. If everyone at your school, do you all know audio designers at your school, or are there any of you who are interested in becoming audio designers?
So Alex, I think he just went to the bathroom, but he is. But other than that, I don't think there's any other people that are just wanting to do audio.
Is there are there any music majors at your schools or a music program at EKU?
Yes, but none of them come to IGDA.
In the broadcasting department, they're starting an audio design, I think minor or something like that.
Oh, cool, nice.
They just
Awesome.
started their first class this semester, and so we're hoping to collaborate with them.
Cool.
So that's
So-
hard.
Yeah.
Well, what I would say for each of you is to, maybe have a couple of you go over to the music department one day with maybe flyers or something, or just try to go over there and just try to get to know a couple of the music majors at your school, or maybe talk to maybe the department chair and see if you can hang up, something on their billboard like, hey, are you looking to collaborate on projects? Come to the IGDA meetings, and especially
we did that at the beginning of the semester.
Looking for things to work on, so I'm sure you can get a couple people in from the music department that might, there's definitely an overlap of music majors and people interested in games. At least that was the case when I went to school, and musicians and gamers is definitely a big overlap of that. So I would go over and just again try to talk to the department chair, maybe bring some flyers and advertise your IGDA meetings, and hopefully try to get some audio designers in too.
We went over at the beginning of the semester and handed out some flyers and stuff, but it didn't seem like it stuck. So hopefully more people come in the future.
Yeah,
but
you might.
keep trying.
Another thing is you're probably just gonna have to be more persistent. Just keep trying. Just go over as often as possible and just keep pushing them until Sometimes it takes some people a while. Sometimes they're busy. They could have been busy with the beginning of the semester or whatnot. It's tough with some people, but if you're persistent, eventually you'll get people over. So.
Yep.
Yeah. Another thing too, with each of you, you can always reach out over Twitter. I don't know how many of you use Twitter, but show your projects off online and post in the game audio hashtag. Hey, is anybody interested in making music for my student projects? You might get some people that way too. So yeah, it's just important for all of you to get out there and meet audio people. So hopefully through your school's music department, you guys can start forming some partnerships. But yeah, anyway, So we're going to talk now about how to communicate effectively and how to give effective feedback. So, communicating with your audio designer is of utmost importance. It's going to save you a lot of, if you're effectively communicating, it's going to save you a lot of revisions, it's going to save you a lot of time, and when it comes time for each of you to, go out into the world and have a budget and whatnot, it's going to save you money too, if you're very effective with your communication from the get-go. Basically, you want your audio designer to be able to get everything right from the first time, and it's on you to be able to communicate what you want effectively. It's also on them to be able to communicate with you effectively to help you both figure out what your game needs, but make sure that as game developers that you're all very good communicators. So, there's been times where myself or other audio designers would feel like they're not part of the team. I've definitely worked on projects before where I would, reach out to the other team members and ask them, hey, is this sound effect working for you? How's it sounding? And then just not hear anything for, a week and a half. And that kind of feels like I'm not part of the team, and I'm just kind of producing sounds, and then, I don't hear anything. So to me, no news is good news. And then I finally hear back from them 10 days later, oh, this sucks. What's wrong with you? And it's like, okay, well, you could have said that 10 days ago and I would have gotten this done already. But, I digress. So for communication tips, it is very, very important to answer audio designers, your contractors' emails on a timely basis. And this goes for any discipline, audio, art, whatever it may be. If your contractor has some sort of question, just make sure you answer it, like I said, on time, as soon as you get it, if you can. It's very important to not just have an email communication, but have some kind of instant communication channel open, so Skype, Slack, Discord, whatever it may be, somewhere where you're easily reached, where you're available as often as possible. Decide on some kind of form of communication, where what you want to use to talk with your audio designer. I've worked with teams where that was Slack. I've worked with teams where that was Skype. I've worked with teams where that was even Facebook Messenger, whatever it is. As long as you have some kind of instant communication, it's great. Face-to-face communication is even better than that, but obviously that doesn't always happen, so that's why we have instant messenger type stuff. It also helps out too if you want to streamline or prioritize tasks on Trello, Jira, Google Spreadsheets, whatever it may be. That helps out a lot too for kind of telling your audio designer what needs to get done first. I think prioritizing tasks, if learning what to prioritize is, and as far as creating sound effects goes, it just makes the whole process so much easier. So making time for discussion, also very important. If you can, have some kind of weekly check-in with your audio designer just to see what their progress is, if they have any questions, if you have any questions, if there's any blockers, whatever it may be. Take the time to discuss what to do with your audio designer. It's going to go a very long way. Also, one thing that's very, 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 very important is that you need to tell your audio designer everything you can about your game so that they can do their job. You might say that, oh, this is a puzzle game, I just need music. Okay, cool. But then, your audio designer can make you some music, and then you fail to tell them that the puzzle game takes place, in space, and that you want a sci-fi. But, your audio designer just kind of made, kind of cute pop music. So you got to tell your audio designer as much as possible about the game. And this kind of goes back to, creating the asset list, figuring out how many tracks you need, how long the tracks need to be, talking, if you can tell your audio designer as much as you can about the game, preferably have them play test it. I think is the best way to convey to them what your game is about. But, if that's not possible, show them art, show them maybe a gameplay video, whatever you can do. But as much as possible so that the audio designer can properly make music. The thing about the NDA here at the bottom probably doesn't apply to college students, but just in case, if you were trying to keep certain aspects of your game a secret, you can always have them sign an NDA, which is basically a non-disclosure agreement. So, you know, if you don't want to have certain things about your game revealed before it's released, you can have the audio designers just sign this. So in case they do blab something, then, you know, you can shoot them out of a cannon into the sun. I mean, don't do that, but you know, you can have them sign an NDA so they keep your game a secret. All right. So anyway, we're gonna talk about giving good feedback for audio. So being able to give good feedback is immensely useful for anyone working on a project. Again, whether it's audio designer, whether it's an artist, programmer, whatever it may be, it'll really help shape sound effect or the song into its final project. So it's just very important to talk about what's going right with the asset, what's going wrong with it, and again, good feedback can save a lot of back and forth iterations. So here's a couple tips for giving good feedback for music. Does the track fit the scenario? You know, is the track maybe too overbearing, or is it just right? You know, if it's a kind of like laid back exploration segment, maybe you want the music to feel more laid back. But if the music's a little too frantic sounding, you might want to tell that to the audio designer. Does it loop seamlessly? If the track has to loop, listen for it and make sure that you can't tell where the loop point happens. If you hear maybe like a click or a pop where it's supposed to loop, then it does not loop seamlessly. But if like the loops go by and you're not even noticing it, then it does loop seamlessly. So that's something very important to think about. Does the melody get tiring? So after hearing the loop for maybe 10 minutes straight, if you're sick of it, then it's likely that the player is going to get sick of it too. So think about if the melody kind of overstays its welcome, or if the melody still sounds good after like 10 minutes. Do you like the instruments? You know, maybe do you like the sounds of the trumpets or the guitars? Just think about like, do you like the instrumentation? Do you like the style? Again, does the style fit your game? Something very, very important is to make sure that the track sounds good outside of the game and in the context of the game. So make sure that as you're playing the game, does the track feel good? And for sound effects, do the sound effects work well against the music, or are they kind of getting lost in the mix? Are the sound effects too abrasive or too boomy, or do they sound just right? If there's an animation that they're supposed to sync to, do the sound effects fit that animation? And then ask yourself too, does it make sense for the object to make that particular sound effects? And just like with music, with sound effects, you should listen to them both outside of the game and in context of the game. Sometimes audio can sound very odd out of context of the game, so don't pass judgment on whether it's music or sound effects until you hear it in the context of the game. Other things to think about too with sound effects, if it's a frequently occurring sound, does it get kind of annoying to hear it a bunch of times in a row, or does it still sound good after hearing it 5, 6, 7 times in a row? So think about that. All right, cool. So that's feedback, communication. I'm going to go briefly into contracts, and even though I'm sure you're all students and I'm sure you're not dealing with money or anything, I still want to talk about why having a contract is important. So, yes. All right. So a contract is basically just a rule book for the contractor and the client, so it's their interactions. So in case things get messy, you can fall back on your contract. So again, even though you're all students and you're not likely paying other students for the work, you still have deadlines, right? You still have times that your games need to get done by. You might not pay in money, but you might agree to some kind of work trade where maybe one of the music students makes music for your game and you help them design their website. Anyway, you want to make sure that all of that is included in your contract. The amount of assets that you need to. I'd say don't worry too much about certain things here, like licensing, who owns the rights to the audio. As students, a lot of your work's going to be non-commercial anyway, so if anyone is curious more about contracts, you can ask me a little bit more. But I think for all of you, it would be very good practice just to learn how to create some kind of contract, even if it's super plain and super simple. Just a make some kind of agreement between you and your audio designer that I need 5 tracks by May 15th. In exchange for your work, I'm going to help you design a website. Sign here, and then you make it some kind of agreement in writing. The contract is just there that in case things get messy, you have some kind of terms to agree on. So anyway, there's that. Almost done with the presentation here, and then just check your time. Okay, making good time. Then I can take some questions and answers. But before I do that, I just thought I'd introduce all of you to interactive audio. So who here knows interactive audio is? You guys?
Who knows what interactive audio is? Yeah. My favorite example is the mini-boss fights from Wind Waker, where all of your strikes, or actually Legend of Zelda games in general, where all of your strikes will activate music cues.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so that's basically what the interactive audio is. It's like how do the player's interactions with the world alter the music? So and even at the college level, you might want to think about some ways to kind of make your audio more interactive. So for example, maybe if you have like an endless runner type game, you might want to start with the background music being just maybe drums and bass, but as the player gets more points and progresses further, you might fade in different layers of music, such as, guitars or maybe a melodic aspect, just kind of in conjunction with the player's increasing score. So, and it really gives a sense to players that they're really interacting with their worlds rather than just, kind of just playing a game. So, you don't always need it, and maybe at like the college level it might not be super necessary, but I'm sure there's all things that each you can do to kind of make your audio feel a little more interactive. The pictured here is Phantasy Star Online, which I think is like one of the very first examples I can remember of interactive audio, where you'd be exploring this, I wouldn't say open world, but kind of like open-ish worlds on these alien planets, and then so it's very peaceful when you're just walking around exploring, but then when enemies pop up, it would just very seamlessly transition into battle music, so I thought that was always really cool. I have another example here, Pokemon. In later Pokemon games, as you're either winning or losing, the music would actually change in the background, which I think is like really cool. I think mostly they do that for gym battles, but I always thought that was a really cool aspect of interactive music. But yeah, having some form of interactive audio can actually help streamline a lot of composing or programming processes or sound design process. You might even, you want to kind of like show changes in environment or just, like I said, winning, losing gameplay music. But there's also more to it than that too. So say like, say your audio designer, or say you task your audio designer with creating footstep sounds, and your audio designer only gives you 6 of them. You can use kind of like these interactive audio systems that I have like introduced over here to kind of make those 6 sound effects sound slightly randomized and varied each time, so it sounds like a bunch more footsteps rather than just being 6 different assets. So that's another cool thing you could do too. Interactive audio systems or audio middleware, very again at a very, very basic level. If you guys want to learn more about it in Q&A, you can ask me and I can answer more questions. But you can do things to your music, such as like seamlessly transitioning between musical moments. You can create like beginning singers for your music, and then that transitions into loops. And then with sound effects, you can kind of create effects such as adding like, or kind of bringing out the low end as you get further away from an object. You can kind of create different reverb based on where your player is listening to the object from, so that kind of just like player interaction with the object. You can also create variations on object sounds, which is great for a lot of repeated sounds such as footsteps, gunshots, stuff like that. You can program in slight variants to each one, so they all sound slightly different. So and a lot of this stuff too, some of the stuff that I mentioned, you can also do with Unity alone, because Unity has really great audio systems now. Are each of you using Unity to make your games, or what are you all using?
Unity and then Unreal.
I can't hear you.
Unity and Unreal.
Okay, cool. I gotta admit, I don't have as much experience with Unreal as I do with Unity, but Unity has really great like kind of interactive audio built into it. So we can talk a little bit more about that if y'all want. But anyway, that's basically just like my overview of ways you can make your music better, or the audio better in your games. So again, making sure that you know what you want, making sure that you communicate that to your audio designer, learning how to find an audio designer who's a good fit for your game. Your contracts is kind of important stuff there, and just very basic ways you can make your audio more interesting through interactive audio. So anyway, I want to open this up to questions, and I think you guys are around till 8 o'clock, so we can take up the whole 50 minutes if you want. So questions.
Can we get the slides from the presentation?
Yeah, I'll send them over to Kyle, and then he can distribute them to you.
Yep.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. All right. Yeah. So, does anyone have any questions or?
I think we got someone.
Yeah. So you talked about contracts. What about like paying on commission? Because I've seen like musicians doing that now, where they do commissions for music.
Yeah. I mean, even if you do hire somebody who just does commissions, just still create some kind of contract, because you don't want to pay the musician and have them just kind of disappear and never talk to you ever again, and then you lose your money. So if you are going the hiring route, make sure that you stipulate that into the contract. So say, all right, I'm going to pay this person $150 or whatever they're charging to create X amount of music. Make sure that that's all in there, and also too, you can even put into your contract this like milestones for payment. So maybe you might pay a musician half up front, half when the thing is done. You might pay all at the end. You might pay in thirds, whatever it may be. You can put all that into your contract. You can literally put any terms you want into your contract, as long as it's something that you and the other party are agreeing on.
Thank you.
Cool.
Does anyone else have any questions for?
What would be the best way to start getting into video game sound and audio?
Best way to start making sounds,
Yes.
audio for games. Okay. Like I would say make sure you have some kind of DAW, which is a digital audio workstation. Helps you record, edit, manipulate sounds. And I suggest Reaper before as being a really good one because of the inexpensive price point. Also that it works on both Mac and Windows, so you don't have to have a particular computer to use it. Yeah, just get some kind of DAW and just start learning how to use it just inside and out. Learn how to import audio, learn how to record audio, learn how to cut audio, learn how to add plugins like EQing, reverb, all of that. Just learn as much as you can about your DAW and how it works. Thankfully, with any program basically that you're going to get, especially with DAWs, there's tons and tons of resources online of how to use it. So you can go on YouTube and look up, Reaper tutorials, and you'll find hours and hours worth of material. So just learn how to use your DAW as much as possible. And then from there, like as your skills are getting better, as you're honing your craft, just definitely start just offering to make sounds for your fellow classmates' games. So audio designers, I'm sure, are difficult to come by at your school. It sounds like you're just getting an audio program off the ground. So if you're volunteering to make audio for people's games, you're likely going to get a lot of work, especially kind of like early on. So just get as much experience as possible. Build a portfolio. You can put your sounds online on a website or SoundCloud, whatever it may be. Or you can make yourself a demo reel with like some gameplay footage of games that you made sounds for. But yeah, just build that portfolio, build that experience, and that's basically how you get started. So and just do good work and have your classmates recommend you to other classmates and just keep getting their work, you know? Get that experience.
Is Reaper a good DAW to work extensively with samples?
You mean like synth samples or?
Yeah, like instrument samples, synth samples.
Yeah, I mean it does basically anything that every other DAW does. So,
Okay.
you know, you can use your instrument plugins with that too. I'm a Logic user myself, but a lot of my game audio colleagues love Reaper and swear by Reaper, so it comes very highly recommended.
I've actually got a question, if you can hear me.
Sure.
I'm a firm believer in learning by example, and I can think of a few games off the top of my head where we could probably get a good example on how to put all this what we learned together. But I'm wondering if you've by chance got any good recommendations of games to pay particular attention to with their soundtracks, any interactive audio, that type of stuff.
Yeah, there's so many games out there with really, really good audio. So maybe, what kind of games do you like? If I can start with that.
I'm a pretty big fan of.
I love Hyper Light Drifter. I think Hyper Light Drifter does an amazing job with audio.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's a really, really good example. What's really cool about that is that the narrative is non-verbal or largely non-verbal. So that the audio really helps convey what's going on in the story. That's a really good one. I actually show my students an example from that every semester. I think it's kind of more, I'm not sure what point in the game it is, because I haven't played the whole game myself yet, but there's like this moment where you overlook like this huge city off in the distance. There's a really great audio cue that builds up when you see the city, and then you kind of continue, and then things get like really quiet, and then you see that huge specter kind of come after you, the screen's flashing red, and you cough and pass out. So I always show my students those audio moments. One, how the music cue just kind of like indicates that city is very important without saying it. And then the next one, when you see that specter thing, how the silence before creates drama, and then all of a sudden, the music gets a lot louder, and you see this thing flash before you, and then you cough and pass out. Again, how the silence beforehand kind of underscores the drama that happens. So that's a very, very, very good example. There's lots of games that have just really, really good music. I'm trying to think of something that's played recently. I don't know, it just depends, what you're, looking for, what examples. Like Dark Souls, I think, is a great example of just ambience audio, and how ambiences really help create the mood of the whole environments, and how, you can actually use ambience sometimes in lieu of music. So I think that's a really, really good example of that. Soundtracks that are just, really good. I have quite a few. I think Kid Icarus Uprising is the greatest soundtrack I've ever heard in a video game.
Finally,
Love it.
someone acknowledges it.
What's up?
Finally, nobody talks about that game.
Well, no, I will talk about that game all day. Just if you hit me up, I will literally discuss that game all day. It's so good. But yeah, I think that's got the best soundtrack I've ever heard. Not only just the excitement of the music, but just the diversity of the music too. How it manages to incorporate almost every music genre you can think about and just still be cohesive and awesome. Other ones I like too, Phantasy Star Online, I think has a really amazing soundtrack. Final Fantasy VI, Chrono Trigger. These are just kind of my favorite game soundtracks. Persona 5 is one I've been getting into lately, and that's got a really kick-ass soundtrack. Jack Ryan Radio, I think, is amazing. So, kind of shows you what area of gaming where I kind of grew up with games. So, all of those examples have really good music. Journey's another one where it's another one where the story is non-verbal, but the music really communicates the story very beautifully. So, that's great. Shovel Knight is another one I think has amazing music. It's all just so colorful, and every environment you're in, the music just fits so well. So, a couple examples there. I'm sure I'll think of 50 more after this call. But yeah. So I would recommend all of those games that I mentioned. Just for music. I'm a very big Smash player, so I think the sound design in Smash 4 is really good too. I just feel like it's very colorful, and even the UI sounds just get you pumped up and excited to play. So that's another good one I think to check out too. And the soundtrack's incredible. Just every Nintendo game you can think of, so it's really cool. But yeah, hopefully that answers that question for you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
What would you suggest sound-wise for a text-based game that is an RPG?
Text-based RPG game. Yeah, so I think sound is going to be really important because you're going to really want your sound to be strong in lieu of visuals. So I would say just you might want to consider the ambient route, like depending on where your player is. Really think about ambiences. So if your player ends up in a forest, or your player ends up in a bustling city, whatever it may be, think about that ambience and think about having that really help convince the player that they are where they are, because they're not going to be able to see it. So you really want to have the sounds exemplify that. Music would be great too. Like the music just has to it has to be that you close your eyes and you really imagine that you're in that environment. So I think music and sound design, especially ambient sound design, can work together really well to help your player out with that. If you want more specific, kind of like, what genre music should I go with, or what kind of music fits this level, like you can give me more details and I can try to help you out with that.
Is there any more questions?
Yeah, I don't know
Okay.
if anyone's looking at the Twitch chat and Nick's in there and he wants to know good sound effect library suggestions.
So if you go on sonus.com, and I'll let me put this in the 2 N's, 2 S's, sonus.com. Sorry. They always have every month they have like little kind of grab bags of free sound effects. They come from libraries that are offered on the website that you would pay for and download, but they'll always offer little samplings every month, and I always think that's a good way to kind of get started, is to download some of those, and at least you have a kind of like assortment of sounds. Another one I like a lot, I think it's called I can't remember what the website is called.
I know Sonus released like a few just giant packs at GDC.
Yeah, they do that every year at GDC, and I'm sure that this year will be no different, where it's like 10 gigs worth of sound effects.
Yeah,
and
I have like all of those packs, so if any of you will want those, like I have one that's like 15 gigs, one that's like 12 gigs, one that's 10 gigs. Just like a bunch of really, really high quality sound effects and ambient noise and soundtracks and stuff. And they're just really good examples for like if you don't really know what to put in your game.
10 tracks, possibly.
Yeah. Then if you don't want to use those and you still want to make your own, then those are great examples just to look at.
Oh yeah, the Sonus sounds I think are fantastic. There's another website too where it's you pay a certain amount of money and you kind of cherry pick what sounds that you want. And for the life of me, I can't remember the name of it. Let me see if it's maybe it's in my like bookmarks or something. Sound effects. Let's see. I have soundeffectssearch.com. I think that will eventually get you to sound effects. There's also epicsounds.com. I can what I can do with these with the end of my presentation is maybe build in a couple links for audio resources. So then when I send it to Kyle, I'll have some of these links in here for all of you, so you can look them up. So I'll put Sonus and all that in there. And links to audio resources. But yeah, so I can do that. Any other questions?
By using samples, can I ever achieve like a real sounding orchestra or close enough to
You
Just like
could
most-
get close. I mean, there's a couple aspects that go into it. I mean, it's starting with a good or at least a decent sounding sample. I think is really important. Mastering how to use key switches and expression is going to be very helpful too. So that's basically kind of just using additional MIDI data to make a violin sound like it's going up bow and down bow, or to make things sound legato versus staccato, or to switch off between it interchangeably, or to just make phrases that feel very natural. So stuff like that's going to help out a lot. Panning your orchestra instruments is going to be very important to that, because our orchestra isn't all just down the center. You think about how the members of the orchestra sit, and you want to pan your instruments according to that. And you want to also make really good use of reverb. So each instrument can have its own kind of like close reverb, and then having overall reverb on the entire thing. Mix of those two uses of reverb. All that's going to make your orchestra sound a lot more realistic. And get as close to the real thing as possible. Another trick that some people like to use too, myself included, is using mostly sampled instruments, but then having one or two real instruments in the mix there. So if there's especially a soloist maybe, and if you want to record just like, a couple real instruments and then having the rest be MIDI sounds, that helps make the whole thing sound a lot more realistic. So a couple of the tricks there.
One program that one of my friends used to make like orchestral music is called MuseScore.
Yeah, I've seen that. The piano sounded a little bit computery, but I know that you can probably make it sound real.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, MuseScore is really good for it's a great free program, and it's good for notation. Like if you need to write out music and have somebody play it. But the samples that come from MuseScore aren't going to be convincing if you want a more realistic sound.
Yeah.
For certain games, you might want a kind of like that sort of like Super Nintendo N64 MIDI sound, and that's totally fine too. If that's what you're going for, I'd say go for it. But yeah, with if you want the more realistic sounds, that would entail getting a designated DAW, like Reaper again would be a good one, Logic, whatever it may be. Getting instrument samples. There's East West, there's Vienna, there's a whole bunch of different instrument samples out there. Contact, Cinebrass and the strings. There's tons and tons of samples out there. But getting some kind of sample library and using the DAW, and again, I'm saying like panning the instruments, adding the reverb, that's what's going to really make it sound more realistic. Again, MuseScore is mostly good for just if you need to make a notation and MIDI mockups. Yeah.
And you can like make your own synths as a sample, right? That's what EDM artists do sometimes, right?
Yeah, you can sample certain things and create your own synthesized sounds. That's not something I do a whole lot myself, but it is something that you can do. So if you really need to, you can do that. I think Contact is really good for being able to create your own sounds too. So.
Cool. Are we good? No more questions? All right. Well, thanks, Alyssa. It was very informative. Can we give her a round of applause? All right.
Yeah, and you know what? If you guys ever have questions, I'm trying to figure out how to unshare the screen. I guess I'll figure that out when the call up. So, yeah, if you guys ever have questions, feel free to reach out. Here's my email. You can also reach me at acmenescompositions@gmail.com. That works too. Or feel free to reach out to me on Twitter. Check out my website, all that good stuff. I'm always open. If you have questions, just let me know, and I'd be happy to answer more of your audio questions.
All right. Thanks a lot,
All right.
Alyssa. Well,
No problem. Take care, everyone.
Yeah. You have a good day.
You too. Bye.
All right. See you.